Coming up on the Fun Show, we got Dan Mantz, the CEO of the REC Foundation and, of course, mentor of F4C 3310, Blackhawk Robotics here, diving in a bit more into what VEX is doing for the live, remote, and virtual events and some really other cool initiatives they have going on. And one thing I'm really interested in talking about is how we're going to apply that or look towards applying that in FIRST as well, too. And, of course, talking about being a chairman's mentor on 3310, looking forward to see what 3310 is doing this year as well. So all that stuff and more coming up. We're going to play fun trivia where you get a chance to challenge Dan for $50, all coming up on the Fun Show.
Giving you a voice,
making it loud our own way.
Welcome to the fun.
First Updates Now is able to create content thanks to viewers like you. Help Fun stay loud, live, and independent here on Twitch with a subscription for just a few bucks a month or with a free Prime Gaming credit when you link your Prime account. Fun Nation members get exclusive benefits including emotes, 5x chance and giveaways, and more. Sign up today to become a member of Fun Nation. Welcome to the Fun Show. I'm Tyler Olds, and joining me is our Fun FTC showrunner, is Sean. Welcome, Sean. Can't wait to have a great show with you today.
Thanks, Tyler. Tonight we have Dan Mantz, CEO of the Robotics Education and Competition Foundation. Dan is also the chairman's mentor for 3310 Blackhawk Robotics and past president of Rackspace Solutions, and apparently another Michigan transplant from Michigan and Fanuc. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And Dan, every time I have a conversation with you, it always turns out to be awesome stuff. So can't wait to get into that. Of course, if you're watching live and you're interested in playing trivia against Dan, Dan has told me he prepared 2 hours for trivia today. Or was that for the show, Dan? I forget which one. But if you're interested in doing that, make sure you join the call-in channel queue in our Discord for a chance to play Dan for $50. By the way, Dan, I just want to say Paul chastised me a little bit when we had him on for giving him too many softball questions. So they might have been cranked up just a little bit for you. You should have given me the softball questions and Paul the hard ones. I am not a FIRST historian by any means. Well, so. we got a couple that are non-FIRST in there as well too for you, so we'll get into that.
There you go. That might help. So, and
of course,
I do know that Paul won a Woody Flowers when he was like 16 years old or something. But that's about the extent of my knowledge. So
there you go. Of course, don't forget if you have any questions for Dan that you'd like to have read aloud here on stream, make sure you take @FIRST Updates Now in chat if you're watching live, and we'll get to those later on during the show.
Dan, before we get into any personal history, I'm hoping we can clear up any confusion. Could you explain what the RECF is and its relationship to VEX and its programs, other competitions, and events?
Absolutely. So the Robotics Education and Competition Foundation was started as a nonprofit in 2010. So this is our 11th year as a not-for-profit. And we basically run competitions and educational programs for many organizations. VEX Robotics, as this audience knows, and as you know, is a leading, if not the leading supplier of robotics education products, right? So VEX is a product company that designs, engineers, manufactures, and sells some incredible products. And we're a not-for-profit that runs robotics competition and education programs. So, one of the big challenges I had when I became CEO is a lot of people just assume we were VEX, but we're not VEX. Of course, we're very, very proud to run the VEX Robotics competitions. They are the largest programs that we run. Right last year, before COVID, we were up to 28,000 teams, including 22,000 in the U.S. We're in 70 countries now. And actually, we have more high school teams and more middle school teams in the U.S. than FIRST does. So we're quite a large organization. And we've also expanded. We have drones programs now, manufacturing. Appreciate you have our Girl Powered initiative up. So we're much more. But again, what is unique about us is we are in the same town as VEX, because VEX did start the REC Foundation back in 2010. But we are independent, but we are in the same town, which really lets us collaborate. So I know later we're going to talk about the VEX AI competition, and that's a good example of the collaboration between the REC Foundation and VEX Robotics to bring out another great product and another great competition to the community.
And you guys were actually in the old IFI building, is that correct?
That's correct. And matter of fact, I am in Tony Norman's old office. So I actually worked for Tony as president of Rack Solutions. And when I took over the REC Foundation and they moved over, we were actually, the REC Foundation was in 2 trailers in a lot.
Oh, so it's a bit of an upgrade at least. Then.
Yeah, it was an upgrade. So I asked them, I said, can we rent the building? And of course they agreed, and we are renting it. We're competent. But I was going to make Tony's office into a conference room, but there's on the ceiling there, I'll see if I can get it up there. But there's a gumball hood right there, right? So that was a car that I rode on with Tony on gumball. And because I wanted it in my office, I ended up asking if I could have the office and keeping the hood. So Tony always threatens to come back and take it, but so far 3.5 years in, I've been able to keep.
Was the jukebox included?
The jukebox was a gift from IFI when I took this job, and because I was asked to take the job, and there's a story behind it, but I did agree to take it, and as a thank you for my years at Rack Solutions, IFI bought me the jukebox. I'm a big music fan, and one of the joys of my life was picking the 100 CDs to put in that jukebox.
Yeah, I mean, Miley Cyrus is my jam too, Dan. I get you.
So we had Paul on last month, and we know we could spend like hours talking about the entire structure of IFI, but we want to fast forward a bit. Before you were the CEO of RECF, you were already working for IFI as the president of Rackspace Solutions. How did you get involved with Rackspace and IFI, and anything you want to mention from your time there?
So it all starts back actually at Fanuc. So I worked for Fanuc Robotics for over 20 years. In the early 2000s, Fanuc started a program that really revolutionized painting, and it was the P500. And I know Paul talked a lot about it last month,
yes, he did.
I won't go into details. But Paul was the mechanical lead for that development, and I was actually the electrical lead. And so my scope included controls and pneumatics. So it was interesting. So Paul and I were both handpicked for this development, and a lot of people thought we would clash, right? So Paul being very outgoing, outspoken, and I was more of a reserved person, especially back then. But they knew what they were doing. I think Paul and I brought out the best of each other. I like to joke that I was too conservative, and Paul made me challenge things and be more aggressive. And Paul was super aggressive, and I kept him from jumping off the edge of the cliff a lot, right? So, but we actually immediately, besides working together professionally real well, we became fast friends. And so Paul and I were close. Eventually, after the P500 was launched and it was so successful, I went from the paint division, where I was a senior program manager. I did a year in Germany on a project, and then I came back and I went into product development, where I led the electrical department, and Paul was leading mechanical. And then when Paul actually took the job in VEX at IFI here, I actually took over mechanical too. So I had mechanical, electrical, and our application equipment. So I had all three. I got a big promotion and a big pay raise out of it, but it was also a very, very difficult job running it. So anyway, Paul and I stayed in touch, remained good friends. He always joked that he was going to get me down to Texas. And back in 2014, he called me and he said, would you really consider relocating here? Because there's a really good opportunity. They're looking for someone to run Rack Solutions. It's a manufacturing company, engineering, design, right up what you're good at. So I flew to, actually interviewed down in Texas, but then I also interviewed in Anaheim at the VEX Robotics World Championship. And Tony and Bob offered me the job. I relocated, and I became president of Rack Solutions. So that was 7.5 years ago. It's amazing how time flies. And, you know, Paul's office was right next to mine. So we worked together at Fanuc, and then we sat right next to each other at IFI too.
So you were there for 4 years, right, at Rackspace?
Yeah, Rack Solutions, I was there for 4 years. And it was actually, you know, Rack Solutions is a leading supplier of data center products, IT infrastructure products. What's unique about Rack Solutions is our manufacturing is done in the U.S. So we were competing mostly against China manufacturing, right? So that was a challenge. I had never run a business, very similar to Paul's background. I had led very complex technical projects, and of course I had to deal with budgets, but I had never had to deal with sales and P&L and stuff like that. So Rack Solutions for me was a great way to learn the business side. One of the things I really embraced was SEO, right? So I became like an SEO expert. You know, it was great. We introduced a lot of new products. We did a product acquisition of a company out of Washington. That was a lot of fun. They specialized in Apple products. You know, you learn about inventory management and cash and all that other stuff. So it was a great, great experience over 4 years. We came out with some really unique products like the Universal Rail that is used by IBM in all their global data centers. So really proud of my 4 years at Rack Solutions. But for me, it really matured me as a manager and as a leader. You really have to learn a lot more. At Fanuc was technical. Now all of a sudden I'm dealing with a service group and invoicing and accounts payable and click rates and stuff like that. So it was a super great opportunity. And we grew quite a bit too. We grew from 14.5 million to 22 million in the 4 years I was president. So I was really proud of that too.
So, okay, so let's fast forward a little bit on there. Of course, Dan, as you know, I had an opportunity to volunteer at VEX Worlds for a couple of years through 2017, and there was definitely a bit of a shakeup that took place after that with multiple changes made in staff and leadership in RACF, and you took over as the CEO of that as well. So can you talk about the transition going from Rackspace to RAC Foundation? How did that conversation even go in the first place? And then what were some challenges you were looking to tackle right when you assumed your role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually going to step back, and it's actually related to first. It's actually my first experience directly led to me coming to the RAC Foundation. So when I got down to Rack Solutions, and we really had stabilized production and sales, I had a little bit of time on my hands, and I started coaching again. So when we moved down here, I had 4 children. 2 were still in Michigan. My son had been on FRC 27, Team Rush, out of Clarkston, Michigan. My middle daughter had been on FLL teams, but we hadn't really done VEX. So we moved down here. My middle daughter joined 3310. That was in 2014. And my youngest daughter joined VEX team. So all of a sudden, Paul and I were talking about, did we want to get back into coaching? And this is a true story. We're sitting in my living room having a couple adult beverages, and we talked about maybe starting a real small FRC team just for our kids that would just do the robot. And my wife said to us, she's like, if you guys are going to invest that much time, you should help as many students as possible. So we reached out to, and 3310 was already way, knew about Paul for sure. And so Paul was already, strongly considering being a mentor there. And I kind of came along in a package deal, but my role was only to be the business mentor, right? But what happened is I became the chairman's mentor, the awards mentor, as I call it, within the first 6 months. And I took my team to NAC, the National Advocacy Conference in Washington, D.C., that Team 27 started, and ultimately was one of the main reasons they got the Hall of Fame. So,
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I took 3310, we took 148 up, and the only other team from Texas that was there was 2468. So I got to know Eric and his wonderful wife, and we realized that NAC was amazing, but if we were going to have an impact in Texas, we needed to do something in Texas. So 2468 took the lead and started SACOT, STEM Advocacy Conference of Texas, which ultimately I think will win 2468 a world championship.
Which, by the way, if I can interrupt and give a plug, is actually this Saturday, and it will be broadcast on Fun. So make sure you check that out. Good. So by coincidence, at 6 p.m. Eastern, that will be on Fun. So make sure you check that out.
Well, I'll have to call Eric and see if they're actually making it FIRST-centric or if it's all robotics programs. Because one of the things is when SACOT started, we wanted it to include all robotics programs, right? Sure. We didn't want it to be FIRST-centric. I understand they're trying to win a chairman's, and it's evaluated. But VEX was actually
more on that later.
So VEX was actually one of the first sponsors of SACOT. I asked Paul for money to sponsor SACOT because I believe in what SACOT is doing. I really believe in it, but I think that it's hard. You shouldn't pigeonhole one robotics program into the entire state of Texas. So at the beginning, it was VEX and FIRST. And actually, I was a speaker there last November. Yeah. And again, but anyway, I don't want to go on a sidebar. They're doing great things, 2468. But what happened is that meeting and then the subsequent, that was a planning meeting. 3310 and 148 were founding members. At the subsequent first meeting, there was a lot of people that are in FIRST and FRC, but they use VEX as their elementary and middle school programs. It's quite normal, right? So I don't think anything is better than VEX IQ for elementary school because you're driving and you're building and you're programming. It's a fantastic program. And a lot of the top FRC teams use VEX IQ and FRC also. So what happened is everybody knew I worked for IFI. Even though I was in Rack Solutions, they knew I worked for IFI. And they were complaining about the RAC Foundation and VEX Robotics in Texas. So I took these complaints back to Paul, true story, And he's like, you know what? We have an opening on the board. He's like, I'm going to nominate you to join the board. So I joined the board.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I joined the board of the REC Foundation. My nature is to really dig. So I started talking to people, going to competitions. And after a few months, I went to a board meeting. I went to Tony and Paul and other board members. And I said, these are some opportunities, some things that I really think need to be fixed. Tony and Paul agreed. And Tony said, I said, Rack Solutions is running really, really well. Would you consider leaving Rack Solutions and joining the REC Foundation?
Sure.
And as you noticed, that happened in 2017. I went to VEX Worlds actually that year as chairman of the board. And right after VEX Worlds, I shared some more feedback, some more opinions, and the board elected me as CEO. At that time, I came in as CEO because we wanted to keep the existing president. We wanted to see if we could work it out. But after a couple months on the job, I realized that I really needed a clean start for the REC Foundation. So I made some very, very visible changes in basically getting rid of a lot of the president, the vice president, and one of the directors. I also made the very unpopular decision of raising registration fees. But I'm a business person, right? And we talk about how important it is for teams, whether they're first teams, best teams, or REC Foundation VEX Robotics teams, how important it is for them to be sustainable. And frankly, the REC Foundation had never increased registration fees, and we were bleeding money. So I made that change. And the first year, I got quite a reputation. I cleaned house, I raised registration fees, but we also implemented a new structure where communications was important, feedback from our most important asset, which is our event partners and our staff, getting their feedback, putting real practices in place, cutting unnecessary expenses. So that was all done in the first year.
That's awesome. It's something that we haven't really seen, at least in FTC, at the national level. We see a lot of feedback going through to affiliate partners, which are for the states. But it's awesome that we're seeing the REC Foundation taking feedback and applying it to the program as a whole. I think that's definitely something that first should look into continuing on.
My first year, I actually traveled all the time. Matter of fact, my first Worlds as the CEO, they showed a video of all the places I had gone and my head exploded. I honestly think that was the most important thing that I did my first year as CEO is I met with every one of our employees, every single one of them, and I got their feedback on what we were doing well and what we can improve on. But I went to competitions all over the country, all over the world, and to get feedback from the event partners, the coaches, and the students. And we made a lot of changes after that first year. And the other thing too, I have to get this in now in case I forget about it, is when I joined the REC Foundation, I did have one demand, and that was I wanted to start a program that was about workforce development and not so much about mobile robotics and STEM. So that was the one condition, is that I had the opportunity to do a manufacturing program because that was really important to me with my background from Fanuc, working for a company that was US-based manufacturing, competing against China manufacturing. I felt it was really important that we had that too. So that's hence my first joining the REC Foundation is why we have our AMC, our Advanced Manufacturing Competition. Yep.
And prior to 2020, what are we going to next, right? You have already probably started planning a couple years in the future. What areas are you trying to improve on coming up?
Well, COVID has changed everything. It's made our life harder, but I also think we are going to come out of this as a much stronger organization. So the first thing when we had to cancel Worlds in February, when we had to cancel VEX Worlds, the first thing we wanted to do is still have a celebration. We knew we couldn't have a competition, but we wanted to have a celebration. So all hands on deck to the virtual VEX Robotics celebration, which, we celebrated our sponsors, our Hall of Fame inductees, and the teams. And we even had a virtual competition. One thing about the REC Foundation VEX Robotics programs is with our affordability and accessibility, our teams play a lot more matches than you do in some of the other programs. On average, our teams play 3.5 matches, but our top teams are playing 10 to 12 events a year. So we had a lot of data saved on how they did in elimination and qualifications. So we took all that data and ran a simulation tournament. We actually talked about running that live over the 3 days, but honestly, it would have been boring as hell. So we ended up doing a lot of the simulations in the background, but it was all random based on real data. and we announced who qualified for eliminations, then the quarterfinalists, semifinalists, and finalists. We announced it during the 2-hour event. But it was good to celebrate the season and thank our sponsors and thank the staff. My staff worked their butt off. But at the end of the day, the REC Foundation last year, we ran 94% of our events. We have close to 3,000 events a year. State and regional championships, we had them almost all. We did have to cancel like 11 of them in California, but I think in total we only canceled 20 out of a couple hundred regional and state championships between our 4 different programs. So we had almost our whole season. We just didn't get to celebrate it at VEX Worlds, which was a shame because we were going to have over 2,000 teams there. Google gave us some sponsorship to increase from our world record 1,650 teams to be almost 2,000. And we were super excited about celebrating our last year in Louisville, but it didn't happen. But anyway, we had to pivot. So we made a decision as a corporation. We weren't going to furlough people, and we were going to work on projects. And we had, like, for example, we pioneered our referee certification. That was one of the things I wanted to change right at the beginning, is that we had certified referees. That was feedback from the field that we had inconsistencies in reffing across the country and the world.
Sure.
So we had already launched
big problem in FTC.
What's that?
It's a big problem in FTC as well.
And it's not perfect in the REC Foundation, but it's definitely a lot better. So we started as a pilot program, and then that first year it was just an VRC VEX Robotics competition, and now it's required in VRC, and we're rolling it out in VEX IQ also. But we wanted to do judge certification. We wanted to do event partner programs where we trained our event partners, especially the new ones in the system, and gave them the resources to run better competitions. We wanted to clean up our website and our documentation. We wanted to work on our great new programs like our VEX Go in-class challenge, AMC, all these type of things. So everybody in the foundation took roles on projects, and we all mobilized, and we did stuff that maybe we had never done before. But we also realized that we really, really wanted to still have a competition, whether we had COVID or not, right? We wanted to make sure that we could have a season, and that's where we kicked off the investigation of could we do something remote, right? And so that's what we did over COVID. And I think some of the things that we did, like a design notebook. I was famous for carrying my design notebook around, and it had to be a bound design notebook. Well, guess what? We realized with COVID, we needed to allow online electronic notebooks. We had to, again, like I talked about earlier, have online judging. And some of those things will stay with us. Even when COVID's long behind us, we will continue to support some of those innovations that we did.
So Dan, before we get too far into some of the new initiatives that REC Foundation is doing, I do want to ask you just a couple questions in regards to VEX Championships and prior to what COVID was on there. And a big question I have really is, I went to VEX Championships a couple times. I had a fantastic experience when I was there, both not only just as a volunteer, which I feel like VEX is always, or REC Foundation really has treated their volunteers and key volunteers, I think, exceptionally well compared to first. And on top of that, I truly do feel like the experience that I felt the kids were having at championships, I thought definitely first should have been looking at some things. And I'll give you a couple examples, and I'd love to hear about to see what your opinion is, or if there's anything you think first could do to maybe improve their championships. To me, number one, I love the fact that you went to 2 championships, but they were adjoining. So VEX IQ and VRC essentially got their own championships. So if you were to compare this to how first Lego League was, or FRC, I know there's not really an FRC in this, but they kind of got their own spotlights, and I really like that a lot because I feel like at first championships right now, everything's so muddled together, and while it's a neat concept, I feel like some of the younger programs don't get as big of a spotlight as they should. So that's number one. And number two is the venue that you hold your finals in. When it was at Louisville, I know it's moving over to is it going to Austin or Dallas? I forget now. Dallas. But the venue was like a 10,000 person venue. It was very close knit. It felt like it was a full stadium, and it really was a full stadium. And to me, like, first is taken away the stadium feel in many circumstances now with championships, and the experience just seems different to me. Is there anything that pops in your head? You're like, hey, if I was doing stuff on first, I'd like to see these changes made as well.
Yeah, I think for us, the student experience is what we prioritize. I joke with our funders that when they go to our sponsor lounge, it's going to be some stale sandwiches and some old chairs, right? So we invest very much in the student experience. And it was very, very important that the students that were in the VEX IQ program, and whether they were elementary or middle schools, felt like they were having their own competitions. So the decision was made to move it to 2 separate competitions. And do more than just that, though. They each have their own ceremonies. They each have their own closing ceremonies. And there's little subtle differences. Like when you walk in, when you were at the in Kentucky, in Louisville, we changed the colors, right? So when it was VEX IQ, it was blue. And when it was VRC, it was red. And the signage has changed and stuff. It really felt like their own event. We also invested heavily in our arena and our Parade of Nations. I see right now the video is showing our Parade of Nations.
This is one of the coolest things, honestly, ever.
Yeah,
like,
it is. And recognize, again, we have 70 countries now participating in our programs. Not all make it to VEX Worlds, but last year I think the last year we had it, 2019, was 46 or 48 countries were there.
Sure.
And it's really important to recognize them and honor them. So we have our Parade of Nations. Even at the division level in 2019, we went to digital screens. We paid a little bit more. We give out, really nice medals. We have, of course, everybody knows us for our fireworks and our lasers and things like that. But at the end of the day, we have to make this a great experience for the students so that they really want to go back and tell their students how cool it is. So our competition is about the students. It's about recognizing our volunteers and event partners and staff that make it all possible, but we're doing this for the students, and that's what we invest our money in. So you don't get a lot of bells and whistles in the sponsor tent. You don't get a lot of bells and whistles in our transportation, but you get a lot of bang for your buck in our divisions and in the Freedom Hall.
So Dan, I'm gonna press you though a little bit on this. Give me one thing you're like, hey, at First Championships, I really want to see this.
At First Championships, okay, that's really tough. So as a mentor of a team that's gone to the finals in the last 2 years, I sure as heck didn't like it in a stadium, right? So and also I was a mentor on 148 when they won it all a couple years ago, and it really was honestly, I'm being honest, was a really drawn out experience, especially for the audience sitting in the stands, right? So so I would like to see FRC First in general tighten up their ceremonies and make sure that the finals are where the students can really enjoy it. The students that have worked so hard since January, they've kicked off their season and worked their butts off, and they deserve to be featured in the final round. That's one change I'd like to make.
So the kind of follow up on that and ask you, so first it announced had championships taking place this year that they weren't going to go to either of the stadium venues, right? So is that something you do think is a good call?
Yeah, absolutely applauded that. I think that in 2019, if we hadn't gone to Minute Maid, we would have been world champs. I think that the lighting changed up 254 and ours.
Sure.
And Paul probably doesn't want me saying this because we're absolutely the best robot in the world won that year. So, but I think we might have been the best alliance. So, but for me, it's just, again, the students are still excited and they're, but I think it's really important that the audience embrace what we're doing also, right? And so anyway, there's a lot of great things First does, right? They're so many students that I've coached have gone on and they're doing fantastic things. But in the FRC program, in my experience, a lot of the students that are on 27, 33, 10, 148 were already pursuing STEM careers. And what I like about the REC Foundation programs is I think we have a broader reach. I think that we are bringing in students that maybe weren't considering STEM and robotics. And one of the things we've really, really diversified this year and last year is with our drones programs. I think between all the mobile robotics programs out there, I think we were almost saturated, but there's so many students out there that are not being exposed to STEM. And we felt it was really important to reach them. And drones are fun. So we piloted drones a couple years ago. And when we piloted the drones, we had immediate huge success. We actually sold out of our pilot year. We could have been bigger, but we capped it at 500. And this year we're adding virtual drones, and we're basically attracting a whole group of students that weren't doing mobile robotics. And I think our new ARM program, we were funded by ARM out of Pittsburgh, Advanced Robotics and Manufacturing. It's a DoD initiative. Sure. We got a funding from them for our advanced manufacturing competition. And again, we're going to reach an entire subset of students that weren't going to do robotics. And it's not all about STEM careers. We obviously need engineers, scientists, mathematicians. That's really, really important. I'm not trying to say it isn't, but right now we have a workforce shortage. We don't have enough people. We have
skilled laborers, right?
Jobs. Yeah, we have lots of manufacturing jobs, but we don't have people to run the robots and the conveyor equipment. So what the REC Foundation is doing is like we're generating the next generation of STEM people, but we're also generating the next generation of workforce development people also.
And one thing I'll just add on to that in my experience, as somebody who's not in either of the fields you just mentioned, but my brother-in-law is an electrician, and he makes just as much money as I do. And he got a certificate for his degree, works when he wants, has all the freedom in the world he wants, and doesn't have any student debt. So like there's so many advantages to, you know, I when I grew up, there in many cases it was still the culture of like you must get it for a degree, don't go be a manual worker for some reason. Man, I'm telling you, if you haven't considered some of those trades fields, you can make fantastic money, not have student loan debt. In many cases, the companies will pay for you to go to college. There are so many cool things out there. So I wanted to get that in before we jumped into some of the initiatives you were mentioning as well, too, Dan.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, one more thing on that is that we have studies, right? So students that are in the VEX Robotics programs that go into tech trades, whether they get an industry certification in robotics or whatever, they complete their training in 50% of the time.
Yeah.
And our partner Ramtech in Ohio, students are graduating from the Ramtech problem going right to Honda, right? They're getting jobs at Honda, and Honda's paying for them to first get their industry certifications. Then they're paying for them to get their associate's degree. Then they're paying for them to get their bachelor's degree. And a lot of times it's actually in engineering. And so the students, you know, that were former students in the VEX Robotics competitions are now degreed engineers that have made money the entire time and have no student debt. So and that's what the AMC program is. That's what our brand new AMC program is. It's a progression. It doesn't replace Fanuc's program or Festo's program or Siemens program, but it's a progression into those manufacturing programs. And the other thing is it's making manufacturing fun, right? You're building a little 5-axis robot, you're building a conveyor system, and we give you a challenge. It simulates a distribution center, think like a UPS or an Amazon distribution center. And like this exciting, the challenge of a VEX Robotics competition or a FRC competition, you still have to have the best throughput. You have to stack the most number of discs in the shortest time without mistakes, right? And so we're really, really proud of those programs.
Yeah, so speaking of these programs, let's just jump right into the future and these new programs that you've been creating. So back in April, VEX AI was announced.
Yes.
It's pretty much VEX hard mode, as Tyler puts it. You even require an application for high school teams to enter to ensure they are prepared for the level of competition.
Yes.
If you've watched FTC Recap, everybody knows that I'm a huge fan of it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and FIRST should be doing the same thing. And I even am considering starting a team at my school. Could you tell us a little bit more about this initiative and what was in the works prior to the pandemic?
Yeah, so what's really, really sad is that at VEX Worlds in 2020 in Louisville, we would have that demonstration. We had a couple teams we were working with that would have actually demonstrated it. But the VEX AI competition has been a couple years in the making. Bob Mimlich, who is the co-owner, co-founder of IFI, and he's their chief technology officer, he's been experimenting with AI for quite a while. In my role with the REC Foundation, we had some of our international international teams that wanted a little bit more of a challenge than what VEXU was giving them. So it was like a match made in heaven. So what we're doing is we're using the VEXU game. And if you're not familiar with the REC Foundation VEXU game, the students should really look into it because it's a fantastic game. You control both robots, so it's 2v2, but the university controls both robots. We allow 3D printed parts. We allow the use of VEX Pro parts, custom metal. And so you get to build two robots and strategize together how you're going to do it. So we follow the VEXU rules, but we add a GPS sensor and we add a camera. And you can see on the field there in this simulation is the bar graph that surrounds the field. And that gives us global positioning. So you always know where your robot is, and you always know where the camera always detects the game elements. We also have robot-to-robot communication. And basically what you're doing is you still have to build a great mechanical robot. We do not ever want to get away from just building great mechanical robots. But now you have to strategize that this robot's taking pictures and seeing where the game elements are And does this robot want to go pick them up and score, or do they want to de-score, or do they want to play defensive? So you're really, it's a software challenge, right? You're really developing advanced software. And of course, this is our pilot year. We made a decision to cap it at 60 teams this first year. The interest was higher than that, but with the COVID-19, we knew we couldn't have as many in-person events. And we have a lot of university teams, but we also have a lot of high school teams. But as you noted, we hand-selected the high school teams. We wanted to make sure that they could build good mechanical robots, but they also had the programming capability. So, so basically you've got sensor positioning, sensors for vision, and GPS sensors. And now you got to figure out how to make your robots take the images, process the images, and take action to go acquire parts. I cannot wait for us to start having the VEX AI competition matches. And we are going to have a division at VEX Worlds in April of 2021 in Dallas. And so that the whole community, and this is the next edge, right? This is the next step in mobile robotic competitions.
And I think a key part of this, like FTC, a lot of the reason why people participate in it over VEX is because of the rules limits with like 3D printing and making custom parts and stuff like that. But now with VEX AI, you can use the 3D printing, you can mill your own parts and stuff like that. Plus, you get the advanced programming challenge. First has tried with those VU-mark targets on the corners of the fields to set up like localization, but nobody's using it because it's too slow and it's just not around the entire field. This has all been solved with VEX AI, so I'm seeing it as a very compelling way to get away, like an alternative to FTC.
And let's take a step back. So, obviously VEXU, we do allow 3D parts and we do allow custom metal. And, one of the number one questions I'm asked is why not do that in VRC? Well, let's look at who we are versus some of the other robotics competitions out there. Our whole mantra is affordability, accessibility, and sustainability. So yes, we do have a kit of parts, but the idea is that we're not at 28,000 teams. We're not the largest high school program in the United States by accident. Not everybody has access to engineering mentors and computer science mentors. We need this program to reach those rural teams, the low budget teams that don't have access to that and need an affordable program. So we've made a conscious decision to keep a level playing field by having the kit of parts, right? So that is what VRC is. But we're not naive. We know there are programs out there that want a little bit more. So what we've done with the VEX AI competition is we've allowed that ability to 3D parts, machine parts, and now we've added the additional challenge of the AI software. So I think we offer more solutions to our community. And again, but for the thing that the REC Foundation prides herself on the most is the affordability, the accessibility, and the sustainability. And I would argue that for me, the affordability is the least important of the three. I think the accessibility of not requiring computer scientist mentors and engineering mentors is more important than everything. And the fact that once you start a program, that you can keep the program running.
Yep. One of the things I just want to mention real quick, and I want to move on after this, is that I don't know how much of our audience even knows that there is a VEXU program out there. So if you are interested, especially for first graduates as well, we always encourage you to go back and mentor at some point, but you could join VEXU at some point as well. There, how many colleges, at least in the States, Dan, are running VEXU?
Last year, obviously, COVID had a little bit of an impact. We were over 300. We're still suffering a little bit from the hurricanes from a couple years ago. So Puerto Rico and Mexico are both down. But we're going to have a renewed emphasis on VEXU. Again, with VAIC, we have two programs. My hope is that any university team or college team that does VAIC also does VEXU. We're consciously going to make sure that the competitions aren't at the same time. Because the driving experience, and you can let's use VEXU to build your robot, and then VEX AIC to program your robot. So, but I expect this will be one of our fastest growing programs next year.
So let's jump in a couple more things as we look at what the REC Foundation. One of the things, with COVID that I feel like has actually given you a leg up, and this wasn't intentional for COVID, but something you've been doing for years, are your challenges for things. So you have your skills challenges and your online challenges. And this is, I think, adapted very well. And I think we're going to see First adapt. We already are starting to see First adapt way more of this sort of model as well, too, in the COVID era. So can you talk a bit more about what these challenges are and just give a couple minutes towards how you're looking at implementing these even more in the future?
Yeah, so online challenges predate me, and most of our online challenges are sponsored. So you have the Dell website, and you have MathWorks challenges, and you have the TI electronics challenges in the past. And but basically, we realize that students have different interests and different skills. And we have students that are really good at programming, students that are really good in building. You have students that want to participate in STEM and be part of the team, and they can contribute in other ways. And the most important way, in my opinion, is the design process, the engineering design process in our notebook. But it's also doing these skills challenges, demonstrating that you know electronics, demonstrating that that you can design a website, or you have great photography skills. Probably the two most popular online challenges are actually the girl-powered online challenge, and then the challenge of the Promote Award, right, where you're talking about what VEX Robotics has done for you. And then the Girl Powered, again, gets hundreds and hundreds. That's sponsored by Google, and that's how you're a girl powered team and why equality in your program is so important. And when we get to chairman's a little bit, one of our newest online challenges is our Community Award, which has a really good story behind it. But one of the things that our staff realized is with so much remote learning is that the challenges we had in the past weren't enough. So our staff worked really hard over the summer to add additional online challenges. We had some that were released just for the summer, just to give students something to do. And almost all our online challenges qualify for VEX Worlds too. Sure. And you will actually see that we will add some more online challenges in the future too. So yeah, it's a big part of our program. I'm also super excited that you mentioned our skills, because skills has been part of the REC Foundation from the beginning, right? We do our robot competitions are actually 3 competitions in one. We have in VRC and VEXU, we have the head-to-head, so 2v2, but we also have and then in VEX IQ we have it's a cooperation, right? It's 2 robots working together in cooperation for the highest score. Sure. But we also have driver skills and programming skills in every one of our competitions. So in the competition, you're working with another team or playing against another team. But if you really want to say, do you have the best driver and the best robot, you do the driving skills. If you want to demonstrate you have the best robot and the best programming skills, you do the programming skills. And most teams do all 3 at one of our competitions. So we've always had skills challenges, driver skills and programming skills. It's been a hallmark of our program. And honestly, it's been really, really adaptable for COVID, because with COVID, when other programs were announcing they were going to have skills challenges, we already had it. We already had the infrastructure in place. And what we did do is we did now allow remote competitions where you set up a camera and you have your skills and we're watching, a referee's watching it. But we still know that there's some areas that's even too much of a challenge. So we are allowing you to film your skills run and submit the video to the judges to judge it, or to score it. So, excuse me, referees to score it. So skills is a fundamental part of our program, and it always will be.
So I want to keep moving on here so we don't get too short on time. Another thing you touched on a little bit, but I'd like to dive a little bit more in, because I think this is really cool, is the aerial drone competition. And part of me thinks back into First in 2011, tried to pilot a collegiate type program called CARD. A little bit of First trivia for you there. And they had a drone thing. I thought that was really neat. So you've introduced an aerial drone competition and a virtual aerial drone competition. You essentially created a video game, right? And can you talk a bit more about that? And I really like the idea of that. It seems like you can do some neat skills challenges with that as well too.
Yeah, so let's talk about, so they're both RAD, right? REC Foundation area drones.
I mean, that's your, okay, I think it's, that's your opinion. That's your opinion, but,
they are RAD, but it stands for REC Foundation area drones, and we have 2. So we have our RAD-C and our VRAD. So RAD-C is flying the drones, it's programming, flying, and adding a little bit of end-of-arm tooling, and you just saw a little bit of a video there. This year's challenge is Mars-themed. NASA is helping sponsoring RAD-C, and we actually have a NASA person on our GDC. It's fantastic. It's a really exciting. But we also, because of COVID, we're also offering a quarter field competition where it's just one student isolated, and he drives the robot. And then we have a half field, again, where it's less students, more COVID friendly. And so that's our physical drone. And then we announced only a couple months ago our virtual RAD program. And this is blending what I would call esports. That's probably our first foray. And you can see the game is called RoboDuel. And this is where students, again, it's a coding. So you get a objection, and you can fly your drone right off the bat. But if you improve your coding, if you make coding changes, you'll get more power, more maneuverability. But it's live, right? You're competing against another drone. So it is a head-to-head competition for top score. And again, all these programs can be found through roboticseducation.org, where you can go to our site or research any of these. But this RoboDuel is perfect for those students that can't go back to school. And again, it does have a very much an esports field, but it's still STEM-based in that you have to have coding skills.
Really cool. And so last thing that we want to really talk about was the live remote head-to-head
Yes.
option that you've been creating for teams. From what I understand, the VRC change-up game and the VEX IQ Rise Above game have been adapted so then multiple teams can play the same match without physically being on the same field. So the scoring has been adjusted so then the different fields interact with each other, but the robots don't need to interact with each other.
Yeah, that was the hardest part, right? So live remote is all of these robotics programs teach some technical skills, but what's most important about all these programs, you'll hear it from first, best, mate, any of these, is the soft skills, right? The problem solving, the troubleshooting, the collaboration, the communications. And we didn't just want to have a remote skills competition. We still wanted that students would collaborate with other students and compete against other students. So we've been working tirely on this, and I'm glad to see that you have our very, very first live remote competition ever happened about a month ago. And basically you have to have a field for each robot, and we have cameras set up. And it's a peer-to-peer communications, right? So each alliance is talking to each other, and it also talks to a server. The delay when you have the peer-to-peer communications is less than 10 milliseconds. Wow. And if we have a communications difficulty and have to go through the server, it's only about a half a second delay. So it truly is real time. But if you look at this year's game, you weren't going to be playing this year's game virtually or remotely that way because there was a de-scoring it. So the GDC, led by Grant Cox, that's comprised of both REC Foundation and VEX Robotics employees, they really had to look at what we can do. So they changed the scoring. The setup's the same, the field's the same, the game elements are the same, but they changed the scoring and they added the end game for more dynamic play. It was really important to still have the dynamic play. So basically, you are still trying to score as many objects as possible. You're still trying to get the tic-tac-toe aspect, so where you take ownership, and if you have a whole row or a diagonal, you get bonus points. But with the end game aspect, you can double, triple your scores. I guess triple your scores, excuse me.
How does this work in an alliance, by the way?
Yeah, so we'll have, just like our current tournament manager, right? So we're going to start small. We're going to have 12, 14, 16 team tournaments. And they'll each we're in a typical VEX Robotics competition. Another thing we do really, really well is most teams get 8 matches, right? So this will probably have 4 or 5 matches. And then you will have rankings, and you'll still do your alliance selection, right? So seed 1 may select seed 3. And then at that point, we'll take a break. We'll allow them to strategize, and then we'll go back and we'll play our elimination format just like we would in an in-person competition. So this is great technology. The live remote is something that I think changes competitive robotics because I think next year, we'll still have more in-person events. People like that. But think about Hawaii. You have all these small islands. Hawaii is a robotics hotbed. But there's some small islands that don't get to go to any competitions except for the state championship. But now they can still have competitions. Or think about one of our great initiatives with the Native American tribes. Now, all these Native American tribes that have robotics kit but only play once or twice a year, sure. Now we can have a Native American league, right? They can use this. Or think about rural America that can't travel to events. So I think this is a game changer. Live remote is the future. And it doesn't have to be limited to the REC Foundation. I think the technology we've developed I think FTC teams could do it. I think FRC teams could do it. Would you need to change your scoring a little bit? Probably, but FTC already has a one robot skill score, right? So you could have it compete against another robot, right? And I think the REC Foundation could help first do it. If they came to us and asked how to do it, we want students to be in engineering. We want students to have workforce careers. So we think this is the future. Nothing is ever going to replace in-person events, but I think this is going to allow us to reach more students.
Ishan, how would you feel this could be implemented for FTC?
Yeah, so with this year's game, a lot of it's about how many rings are going to be on the field. So if you could have it so then as soon as a ring is scored, the other alliance is allowed to drop in a ring. That would make it a lot more interactive, and it would make there be a little bit more dynamics to this game. This game was very changed since it wasn't released at Worlds and it was released in September. They had the summer to change it around, so then it was meant for a virtual sphere, but definitely something I would look into. One thing I did have a question about was in FTC, they aren't mandating cameras to take video. Are you guys sending out cameras to teams that may not be able to afford it, since accessibility is something that you were looking at?
Yeah, we'll have grant opportunities for teams, but the nice thing is any camera. I actually knew you would ask this. I guess so. I said. So let me bring this up here. Here we go. So as long as you have a USB webcam that's 720 pixel or higher resolution, it can be used, right? So some of the cheapest cameras, we've tried it with some of the cheapest cameras and some of the oldest computers, and we can make this work. So,
sure.
But yes, we will, again, accessibility, affordability, as we have grants to help teams registrations this year. We still have our very popular event partner grants to help EPs run events. And for the first time ever, the REC Foundation is running some qualifying events too. Generally, we don't do that. We leave it to our event partners and we just run VEX Worlds, but we'll run some events to fill in the gaps too. But we want to make students, one of my biggest fears for all of our programs out there is if we take the year off, we lose the momentum, right? We're growing 5,000 teams a year, 4,000 to 5,000 teams a year. The other programs are growing, and I'm afraid we lose 3 or 4 years of momentum if we don't keep the students engaged this season.
Dan, I want to ask, just jump back on one last thing, and then we're going to wrap up talking about 3310 for FRC. You mentioned that VEX Worlds right now is slated for April of 2021.
Yes.
I'm going to be honest with you, somebody who lives in Wisconsin where COVID is beyond rampant right now, that seems to me like a pipe dream in many cases. So how are you preparing for VEX Worlds? First is announced, it hasn't really given, they said August maybe, right? Like they really haven't given much of anything solidified yet. So what allows you to come in and say, it's going to be in April with confidence?
Yeah, so, right now, we still feel we will have an in-person VEX Robotics competition, but we're not naive, right? So we know there's countries that won't be able to travel here. We know there's states that may not be able to travel here. So the 2021 VEX Robotics competition was going to be the largest ever. We were going to be over 3,500 teams. We had changed the format to have more divisions. Right now, we're planning for the event to be about half that size. And we're not naive either. We expect that we'll pull more teams from the wait list than maybe before. But what we're really doing is this live remote competition that we just demonstrated. We will have, during the VEX Robotics Championships, we will also have a live remote VEX Robotics Championship. So that's something that no one else is doing. So, for example, if you are in Singapore and you qualify for VEX Worlds, but you can't travel here, or if you're in California or Wisconsin, and we have some incredible VEX teams in Wisconsin, by the way.
And right in the area I live, actually, right in the Fox Valley area, yep.
Yep. So if you want to compete for VEX Robotics World Championship, you are going to have that alternative path. So we see 2 paths this year. We see our live and in-person event. We see our live remote competition too. So there will be, with 100% certainty, a 2021 VEX Robotics World Championship event. And again, so live remote right now, and if you go to our website, you can learn more information. But right now we're doing practice matches, and teams are signing up right after school and they're practicing against each other. In early November, we'll release the next version of software. The REC Foundation will run a couple of the competitions, and then by late November, our event partners will start running competitions.
Great. So switching over gears to 3310, you're a mentor for 3310. How's your team preparing for this upcoming unusual season?
Well, 3310 has had a lot of success the last few years, mostly because of other great mentors on the team.
They've had German success now too.
Yeah, we've won 2 blue banners. More. What I'm more proud of Chairman's though is actually our Woody Flowers Award winners. I think that for me personally as a mentor, our Chairman's team takes the lead on the Woody Flowers Award essays, and we've actually had a Dean's List finalist too. And
You've had 3 Woody Flowers finalists, I think. Is that right?
We've had two right now. So
two plus a Paul, right?
Plus a Paul, right? So Leslie Reese won it at the first Texas State Championship. I was so happy. She started this program based on a best team and a student that wanted to get into FRC, and she's built up an incredible program. And then Brian Selly, who's probably one of the very best mentors out there and is not as known. He won it 2 years ago. He's absolutely fantastic. He was a great mechanical mentor before Paul joined 3310, and he's probably one of the top programming mentors in the world. Just a truly great guy. So both of those mentors have won Woody Flowers Awards, and that makes me more happy than the Chairman's awards that we've won. But we're looking at the season. I think if the season would have continued, we'd have done design iterations on our robot. So we'll continue to do that. We are going to register. So one of the competitions that first is announced for FRC, I used to be a future problem solvers coach, and I think the engineering challenge one, it very much aligns to what I used to do as a future problem solving coach. So as Chairman's mentor, I've gone to Leslie and said I would help mentor that application. 3310 has a lot of really, really smart students, so they'll continue to look at the design, they'll continue to iterate the design. We'll continue to follow the design process and prototype parts and make our robot better. So we will have a season. It's my gut feel that there will be some Texas competitions. It may not happen until April or May, but I do think we'll have some in-person competitions later in 2021. So we'll be ready.
And one of the last thing I want to bring up as a Chairman's mentor, but also the CEO of RCF as well too, is not too long ago. We kind of previewed this a little bit in the beginning of the show. First made a pretty big announcement in regards to changes to chairmans and how they viewed chairman's not necessarily eligibility, but how they were giving credit for chairmans in many cases. They were basically ended up disqualifying in many cases efforts led to help other STEM programs. In many cases, the variableness was VEX teams as well too. So now this was recently revised for the 2021 season, and we'll talk about that a bit more. And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that. But what are your thoughts in regards to first direction on this type of change, where there is more focus on their program and not as much programs as a whole, even though there has been some revision to that?
Yeah, so let's talk about it in detail. So for those that don't know that are watching, in 2017, the Chairman's Award was to its teams that have judged to create the best partnership effort to team participants, which exemplified the true meaning of first, right? In October of 2018, they changed that. They changed that to say it had to be through first programs. As someone who's obviously intimately involved in VEX Robotics competitions, I was not happy with that. I know a lot of the World Championship Chairman's teams got there by starting hundreds of VEX Robotics teams, and I think that the community needs to be program agnostic. I think we are a great program for world teams. I was very disappointed when I went to a SACOC conference and everybody's saying these world teams can't afford to have an FRC team. What are we supposed to do? And I said, have them start an FRC team. And they're like, what's FRC? And we explained it, and they're like, yeah. I said, if your goal is to win a chairman's team, then maybe this isn't good advice. But if your goal is to really meet the vision and mission of first, then you're doing the right thing. So I was not happy with the 2019 change, both from RAC Foundation, but also someone who used to believe in the first ideals, right? It's not a secret. And there's some other people like Alan Gregory that were very verbal about the change. So I reacted. I had a unique opportunity, right? I run a competitive program. So we actually, something I said I would never do is we started our own award called the Community Award. And if you look at the Community Award,
started their own award?
No, I did that as the CEO of the RAC
Gotcha.
Foundation,
Okay.
Right? So, and Google believed that these awards should be for teams that help grow STEM, and it shouldn't be program specific. So if you go to the website and see what the qualifications for the Community Award, you'll see that they are written as such that it's about starting STEM programs and about giving the message of STEM. It's like what the Chairman's Award used to be in the old days, to be frank. So not trying to start any arguments or things like that, but this one really hit me pretty hard. As both someone who believed in the ideals of what robotics programs do and as the chairman's mentor. So we started our community award. Matter of fact, we had 10 winners our first year. Google sponsored it. And one of the winners was they had a VEX team. You do have to be a registered VEX team, but almost all their community growth was from starting first teams. And we had another one who won it based on the science fairs that they were running and hot air balloon experiments and things like that. And they didn't start any VEX teams or mentor any VEX teams, but they were still changing the culture, which is what we need. So we adapted what we did in 3310. I met with everybody, and we're never going to say that we don't do VEX Robotics. We have VEX Robotics in every single elementary program. And so we said we are going to focus on the Engineering Inspiration Award, right? And we changed our application, and we changed how we answered our essays and our presentation to emphasize how being on 3310 emphasizes the engineering process and how we help other organizations learn to be engineers. So we kind of changed our focus from trying to win a chairman's to that.
That's fair enough. So plus if you win EI, you get some bonus money, right? So
exactly, yeah.
That too. So so we are running a little bit short time. I do want to try to get trivia in as well too. So a couple things I just want to ask real quick, questions that came in. I don't recall if you answered this, but I want to make sure this gets answered. So Poofy Jacket 254 asked about VEX AI and asked, will multiple small tournaments exist for this, or is it just going to be a grand tournament at Worlds?
There will be a grand tournament at Worlds, and we're working really, really hard to have some in-person VAIC events. So Jim Crane leads that for the REC Foundation. And now that all 60 teams are registered, we're looking at geography and if we can put a couple events together.
All right. And another a little more comical, and we got two from here, so I'll let you answer these both together. It's from Poos, which apparently we have a lot of Poos people on. It said, what's your favorite type of garden gnome? I have no clue if that's an inside joke, but I figure I'll ask that. And then what sorts of things will 3310 be doing to help teams around them succeed during the pandemic?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'd love to know who asked that. Traditionally, we haven't started FRC teams, but we will go assist. And there's a couple local FRC teams that some of our more experienced students will go and help them with their design, help them with their build. We also run, again, it's not for specific, but 3310 runs a lot of robotics competitions for the VEX teams in the area, and they volunteer, like the Greenville event, the Greenville FRC event. Adrian Emerson will tell you that the 3310 kids raise their hand and volunteer exclusively. But we do go help local FRC teams. That's something we've always done, whether it brings some fanfare or not. The Terrell team that's done really well. They have a great VEX program, and they finally got into the FRC world, and we were able to help answer some of their questions and stuff like that. But right now, our chairman's team is looking to grow robotics throughout the state of Texas through the Texas Workforce Commission grant. So the REC Foundation was awarded the TWC grant this year, along with First in Texas. And we are going to start as many teams in Texas, whether they're first teams or VEX Robotics teams. And we're also really focused on helping the deaf and hard of hearing community. So that is going to be a key effort for the 3310 chairman's team this year.
Yeah, thanks for answering that. Thanks for the questions in chat. We're going to get trivia in just a second here. I do want to talk about a couple of quick things. We touched on one earlier, just coming up on fun shortly. We do have the SACOT event, which is going to take place on Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central. And it's going to be, it looks like they're going to have the president and executive director of First in Texas. I'm not sure if they'll have any others on. I know in the past they've had a few people on as well. So make sure you check that out. That is ran by Team 2468, or if they're, if I'm mad at them, I call them 2468, but we won't do that. So, but yeah, so make sure you check that out on Saturday. Lots of cool stuff going on with that. And then lastly, we've been promoting this a little bit, a project that Fun has been working on as a partner project, and that's with our friends at Boardlandia, which is a tabletop e-commerce store. They do have a retail location too, but if you're interested in learning more about board games and what's going on for that stuff, make sure you check out Boardlandia on YouTube with a free board game giveaway every single week. All right, so with that said, we're going to wrap up the show and do some trivia here. So we're going to bring in Poofy Jacket 254. Poofy Jacket 254 will be the one doing trivia here today against Dan. So Dan, once again, 2 hours of studying. Hopefully you're good on that. But here's how it's going to work. I'm going to explain it through as we go through. First off, Poofy Jacket, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome, man. Welcome. So what's your first name? And then I'm going to assume you're on 254.
Yeah, my first name is Emiliano, and yeah, I'm on 254.
Emiliano on 254. Awesome. Dan, you won't be able to hear him, so you can't hear the answers as they go through. So here's how it's going to work. We have 5 questions we're going to ask. These are timed, so you want to make sure you answer them as quickly as possible. If you don't know the answer, you can say pass, and we'll come back to that. However, the second time around, whatever you give for an answer is what you'll take. And if you say anything other than pass, that's also what we'll take as well. The time is the tiebreaker on it, so make sure you're going as quickly as possible. We're going to do Poofy Jacket 254 first. Dan, if you don't mind, and I forgot to preface this for you at the beginning of the show, if you could just put your volume down so you can't hear these questions, and I'm going to give you a big wave on screen when we want you to come back. All right?
Sounds good.
All right.
Doing it right.
You got it. Good luck to you. So, all right. So, Poofy Jacket, Emilio, are you ready to go?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. Let's start our trivia here, chat. Let's see if you know some of these. Don't give them away too much. Starting in 3, 2, 1. According to the first website, what was Dean Kamen's first invention?
I believe it was something. Just pass.
Which network did the show BattleBots originally premiere on?
ESPN.
What is the oldest remaining FRC team in Texas?
148.
With approximately 155 million units sold, what is the best-selling video game console of all time?
Xbox One.
And in what year did the first pilot show for First Updates Now premiere?
Can you repeat that?
In what year did the first pilot show, our first show ever, in First Updates Now premiere?
2016.
And time. All right, we'll bring Dan back here. That was pretty quick, Amelia. How'd you feel you did?
I feel like I did pretty badly, not gonna lie.
Oh my goodness, Emilio, I skipped you on one though. You said pass and I didn't come back to you, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer this. It will be Dan's first question anyway, so you can go through it. According to the first website, what was Dean Kamen's first invention?
I can't remember the name. I know what it is, but I can't remember.
Can you describe it?
It's something with, I believe, diabetes. Like.
All right, we'll take that as your answer then. We're going to keep the time as is, as Sean, just so we'll make that fair on them. All right, Dan, questions coming to you then. And once again, you can say pass, and we'll come back to it if I remember, hopefully. And with that said, coming to you in 3, 2, 1. So according to the first website, what was Dean Kamen's first invention?
I'm going to guess the insulin pump.
Which network did the show BattleBots originally premiere on?
The Science Network.
What is the oldest remaining FRC team in Texas?
118.
With approximately 155 million units sold, what is the best-selling video game console of all time?
Atari.
In what year was the first pilot show of First Updates Now?
Oh my goodness. Let's say 2015.
And time. All right, it's pretty quick. We'll bring Amelia back on here. We're going to go through these one by one, and audience, you'll hear the little bell if they get it right. And I know our caller and Dan won't be able to hear that. And, of course, a buzzer if they are wrong. It's pretty close here, so timing is going to be a little bit of a factor, I think. We'll see. So with that said, starting out, first question. According to the first website, what was Dean Kamen's first invention? Emilio said a diabetes-type machine. Dan said an insulin pump. It's actually a bed-making machine. He did it when he was 6, I believe. So that, according to the first website. So 0-0 on that. Which network did the show BattleBots originally premiere on? It was actually back in 2000. Amelia said ESPN, and Dan said the Science Network is actually Comedy Central. Comedy Central is where BattleBots originally first premiered. 0-0. What is the oldest remaining team? What is the oldest remaining FRC team in Texas? Amelia said 148. Dan said 118. It is 148. So Amelia up 1-0. They're an original and sustaining team, 148.
I am going to be absolutely slaughtered on that one. I'm a 148 mentor. I will not be able to show my face in Greenville ever again.
Let's move on. So with approximately 155 million units sold, what is the best-selling video game console of all time? Dan went old school and said Atari. And Amelia said the Xbox One. It's actually the PlayStation 2. 155 million units sold. So right now, Emilio is up 1-0. Emilio gets his answer right, he will win $50. If Dan gets it right, we'll go to the tiebreaker. And of course, if you both get it right, Emilio wins the $50. So in what year was the first pilot show of First Updates Now? Dan said 2015. Amelia said 2016. It is 2015. We're going to go to time here. So, Emilio, we came back to you, but we didn't charge you that extra time. Emilio, you had 50 seconds. That's one of our fastest responses we've had on here. So if Dan is quicker, it's going to go to $60 on our FTC recap show next week. Emilio, Dan's time was 38 seconds. Dan takes it with 1-1 on the tiebreaker. Not the most stallion defeat that we've had on here, but you still get it, Dan. Congratulations.
I don't deserve to get it with not getting 148. Shame on me.
Yeah, shame on you for that. Amelia, thanks for playing. Appreciate it on fun. So that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. Thanks once again to Ishan for a great co-host here today. Make sure you check out Ishan next week on FTC Recap. Ishan, what's coming up next week?
I think we got Go Builder coming on the show. They're going to be showing off some of their new parts for this season. We got Ethan and some of the other members from their team, and it's going to be an AMA-style interview. Awesome.
Can't wait for that. And Dan, thank you so much. Give us more details, of course, from the REC Foundation and everything going on there. And, of course, good luck to 3310 Blackhawk Robotics coming up this season. It's great to talk to you, by the way. It's been too long.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun, and we'll let you guys know how VEX AI competition goes and some of our other great programs in the future.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. Once again, make sure you check out our Discord, discord.gg/First Updates Now. You can catch us on social media, both under First Updates Now and Fun FTC, both on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Still not on the TikToks yet. Sorry, everybody. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. This will be it for the Fun Show. We'll see you next time on Fun. Talk to you then. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you want more fun content, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Thanks to all of our co-executive producers on Patreon and Tier 2 Plus subscribers on Twitch, keeping fun loud, live, and independent.